Hello everyone and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. My name is Giridhari and today we're continuing with our Gita Mahatmya series, and we're in the 8th episode of this wonderful series where we're taking these teachings from the Padma Purana, where Lord Shiva is talking to Parvati what he understands to be the glories of each chapter, the power of each chapter of the Bhagavad-gita. And today, it's quite detailed. I'll be teaching you the exact Sanskrit words to chant to guarantee your liberation according to Lord Shiva from the chapter 8. So it's a special class. Make sure you watch the whole thing. So let's get started here. Sri Shiva said, "My dear Parvati, now please listen to the glories of the 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad-gita. After listening to this, you will feel great joy. In the south is an important town called Amarkadpur, in which one Brahmana of the name Bhasha lived, who had taken a prostitute as his wife. Bhasha Sharma enjoyed eating meat, drinking wine, stealing, going with others' wives, and hunting." So this is like a list of classic Vedic, like this is as low as you can go list. So it starts, it's always with the getting married, with the prostitute, but then eating meat, drinking wine, stealing, cheating, going with other people's wives, and hunting, which is like, the lowest. One day, that sinful Bhasha Sharma was invited to a party where he drank so much alcohol that it started to come out of his mouth. After the party, he became very sick and suffered from chronic dysentery. And after many days of suffering, he died and attained the body of a date palm tree. So he's a very, very lowly, sinful person, and he was an alcoholic as well, and he drank so much, he basically drank himself to death. And because he was in such low tamasic consciousness, Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, when you die in tamas, you take birth as a lower species. So he went right straight into a tree species. So he was born as a date palm tree. One day, two Brahma Rakshasas, two ghosts, Brahma Rakshasas is a special type of ghosts, came and took shelter under that tree. Their previous life story was as follows. So now we're going to hear about these two Brahma Rakshasas. So they probably didn't do so well either because they were there as ghosts. So there was a Brahmana by the name of Kushibha, who was very learned in the Vedas and had studied all branches of knowledge. His wife's name was Kumati, and she was very evil-minded. Although that Brahmana was very learned, he was also very greedy. Along with his wife, he used to collect lots of charity every day. But he would never give charity to any other Brahmana. So this is a classic thing, right? A person is in a position to ask for charity because they're Brahmana. You have this, to these days, you have a lot of this. And so you have these people who say they're like holy people and they keep asking for money, but the money is all for them. It's just like, and they're having this lavish lifestyle. You see this? Unfortunately, it's happening right now. Like so many are doing it right now. So they ask for charity. That's why I don't like this thing of like, oh, ask for charity. People sometimes say, okay, but you charge for your courses. Yeah, because then it's like a fair thing. Like this, I'm giving you this and I'm charging you for that. It's like a fair thing. Not this charity thing, like asking for charity and then the person's like, then how are you going to use the charity? Just to maintain yourself? No, these people, they fly first class, business class, they get the latest thing, they get luxury, like, oh, but it's all charity. So it's very bad. So he was doing that. He was getting all this charity for himself and not giving it to anybody else. When their time came to die, they both attained the forms of Brahma Rakshasas. So because of that greed, they were attached to money. When you're attached to something material and you die very attached, you become a ghost. This is something we've been learning from the Gita Mahatmya series. So they became Brahma Rakshasas. As Brahma Rakshasas, they continuously wandered here and there over the earth, suffering from hunger and thirst. So very heavy karma. So hunger and thirst constantly. And as ghosts, they couldn't satisfy their bodies because they didn't have a body. Very, very hard. One day they rested under that palm tree. At that time, the wife inquired from the husband, how can we get free from this curse of being Brahma Rakshasas? He replied, by knowledge of Brahma, by knowledge of the self, by knowledge of fruitive activities. Without such knowledge, it is not possible to get free from our sinful reactions. Upon hearing this, his wife inquired, oh my Shri, what is Brahma? What is self? What are fruitive activities? So, this is it. It's coming up now. So what happened is, she asked him, how can we get out of this ghost form? He says, well, we could get out of this by having knowledge of Brahman, of, understanding what Brahma means, what Brahman means, and by knowledge of the self, and by knowledge of karma. So she says, but what are these things then? And then she said exactly in Sanskrit, Kim tad brahma, kim adhyatmam, kim karma purusottama. And thus, by doing that, she accidentally chanted half of the first verse of the 8th chapter of Bhagavad-gita. Completely by accident, the wife happened to chant half of the first shloka of the 8th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad-gita. At that time, having heard that half shloka, Bhasha Sharma broke free from that form as a tree and again attained the body of a brahmana, completely free from all sin. Suddenly, from the sky came a flower airplane which took that husband and wife back home, back to Godhead, to Vaikuntha. Afterwards, so those two horrible Brahma Rakshas, they became liberated just from chanting that half shloka. From their Brahmana, from their ghost form, they immediately became liberated. So they just said, so pay attention, Kim tad Brahma, kim adhyatmam, kim karma purusottama. So repeat those words. Kim tad Brahma, kim adhyatmam, kim karma purusottama. That's just half of the first shloka of the 8th chapter. So with that, they were freed, they were back home, they were liberated. And that Brahmana was liberated from his tree life and took the birth of a Brahman again. Afterwards, that Brahmana, Bhasha Sharma, with great respect, wrote down that half shloka. Kim tad Brahma, kim adhyatmam, kim karma purusottama. And with the intention of worshipping Sri Krishna, he went to Kashipuri and started performing great tapas, great austerities, while continuously chanting that half sloka. Meanwhile, in Vaikuntha, Lakshmi, seeing Sri Vishnu had risen suddenly from taking rest, inquired with folded hands, "Why have you risen so suddenly from your sleep?" Sri Vishnu said, "My dear Lakshmi, in Kashipuri, on the bank of the river Ganges, my devotee is performing great austerities, continuously chanting half a shloka of the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita. For a long time I have been thinking how to award his devotion." Parvati inquired from Shri Shiva, when Sri Vishnu was so pleased with his devotee, what benediction did he bestow upon him? Sri Shiva said, Bhasha Sharma went to Vaikuntha to engage in the eternal service of the lotus feet of Sri Vishnu. Not only that, but all of his ancestors also attained the lotus feet of Sri Vishnu. My dear Parvati, I have described to you just a little of the glories of the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita. So that's it. Wonderful story. So 8th chapter is quite powerful. And actually, one of my favorite verses from the 8th chapter is verse 5, where Krishna explains what happens, because Arjuna asks him, at the moment of death, what can you do? And then Krishna explains to Arjuna, at the moment of death, if you fix your mind completely on me, then you will attain me. And of this there is no doubt. So actually, very important verse, because that day will come for all of us when we die. And Krishna says, look, if you can just concentrate all your bhava, all your nature into my nature, if you can just concentrate completely, then you will attain me without doubt. So that's also a very good thing to learn. So, very wonderful, very powerful 8th chapter, and very powerful half shloka for you to chant. Hope you've enjoyed that. If you have any questions, please leave your questions below, and have the rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love.